That's that autumn wind. Shout out to the Raiders, man, we about to win.
Do you want Paul Guenther in 2020? Type K for keep or type F for hire. I got 3 Raiders assistant coaches that are on the hot seat, and this segment is brought to you by our good friends BMW of Santa Maria. Now, there's a lot of coaches on the hot seat, and I'm going to give you 3 names that are on the hot seat, the assistants, and then I'm going to give you a coach at the very, very end on how I think we could correct all of our defensive coordinator issues. So, what should we do with Guenther? Type K for keep or type F for fire. If that was confusing, I'm sorry. Do you want Paul Guenther in 2020? Type K for keep or type F for fire. So the first coach I'm going to talk about is Paul Guenther, okay? Paul Guenther, 17 years of NFL experience. This is his 2nd season as the Raiders defensive coordinator, and it has not gone well. And judging by all the Fs in the comments, I think y'all agree with me that it might be time to move on from Paul Guenther. So when I really think about the Raiders' defensive ranks and how they've stacked up this season, I know Derek Carr has gotten a lot of blame, but I actually think one of the biggest reasons why we've been struggling is because of our defense and because our defense looks lost under Paul Guenther. So do you want Guenther in 2020? I want you to type K for keep. I want you to type F for fire. I'll give some shout-outs here to some people. Ryan says keep. Chris Gomez says keep. Los says fire. Kenneth says fire. Okay, seeing a lot of Fs. Dasani says fire. So keep or fire Paul Guenther. One of the reasons why I think it's time to move on from Paul, here's the Raiders' defensive ranks this year. Points allowed, 28th. We've allowed 28.2. Yards allowed, 28th in the league. Passing yards allowed, 28th in the league. Rush yards, sacks. We're not getting better on defense. Now, I don't know if I necessarily believe that defense still wins championships, but from what I've seen the last few weeks, from what I've seen from this team, something needs to change. Something really, really needs to change. And Paul Guenther, I don't know if he's the answer, but when I go back and I look at the last 3 weeks for this Raiders team, and the fact that we've given up 34, 40, 42, I mean, we have to make some sort of change. Now, I don't necessarily know if Paul could figure it out with maybe better pieces, if we had a healthier team, but something has to change. And the biggest reason why I say that is because this is what's happened the last 4 years with Paul Guenther. These are where the Raiders have ranked, or this is where teams have ranked underneath Guenther the last 4 years. Points per game, 28th. Points per game in 2018, 32nd. Okay? The last 2 years with the Raiders have not been good. And yes, we have a lot of young players. We've had some moving bodies. But realistically, even in his last 2 years with the Bengals, it started to get worse. So if Paul Guenther can't figure it out, I don't know. And I think we have stellar rookies, and we have 5 picks in the top 100. And I want to be able to invest in our defense. I just don't know if Paul Guenther is the guy I want molding our young defense. Now, I've told you guys before to subscribe because the Raiders, they watch this channel. So the more people we can get to subscribe, the louder our voice can be. So please subscribe, click that big red button, youtube.com/Raiders Report, because we've had other moves. I see somebody saying Jack Del Rio, Mitch. If you want Jack Del Rio as the coach, I'll put it on the show. Subscribe, youtube.com/Raiders Report, okay? Click that big red button. I'm seeing some Ron Riveras. I'm seeing some different names. The reason why I want you to subscribe is because we need to create a voice for the nation. The bigger our channel gets, the more people get heard. We got 666 people watching right now. It's kind of creepy. Kind of creepy. That's all I'm saying. So please subscribe, youtube.com/Raiders Report. And if you want a shout out, type sub, because I appreciate every single person that subscribes to our channel. Click that sub button. Click it. Do it. Now, I want to give some shout outs here to some people that followed me on Instagram. And I don't know if you guys can hear it. I hit 10K. I appreciate you, which means this. Get out of here! Raider, YPM, Salzer, Daniel, Big Papa 76. I appreciate everyone that followed me on IG. Rip Al Davis, CJ, Matt, Eddie, Lorenzo, Juan, J. Soto, B. Jones. Thank you very, very much. If anybody, and I mean anyone's going to Raiders vs. Jags next week, you show me that you subscribe, show me that you follow me. I'm going to buy that first round of beers. I don't know if you guys can hear it. The Chat Sports Studio right now is kind of freaking out. You know what? Somebody grab me a beer. Somebody grab me a beer. Now, all right. I appreciate all the follows. We got the 10K. Now, let's look at the next Raiders assistant that's on the hot seat, okay? And remember, today's segment is brought to you by BMW of Santa Maria and Community Volkswagen. Great sign, then drive car deals going on until January 6th. So you got Jim O'Neill here. Our secondary is just giving up big plays one after another. And players, they look confused and just lost. I mean, it reminds me when I was a kid looking for Where's Waldo. And when I think about our secondary and I think about all the changes that have happened, something needs to change. I mean, look at what has happened the last 3 weeks against quarterbacks. We made Ryan Tannehill look like the greatest quarterback in the NFL. 391 yards, 3 touchdowns. That's 14.5 yards per completion. Now, we did hold Patrick Mahomes, right? However, he didn't need to throw the football because we gave up 32 points on defense. And then Sam Darnold, a few weeks ago, he was seeing ghosts, and then we made him look like Joe Montana. 315 yards, 2 touchdowns. I mean, our secondary needs to be able to figure it out. Now, right now, this is what our depth chart looks like. And right before we came on the show, DJ Swearinger, he got cut. LaMarcus Joyner has been a major disappointment. I think he's been battling some injuries. Trayvon Mullen has been solid. Worley, the last few weeks, hasn't been playing all that well. Lawson hasn't been playing all that well. But, I mean, the biggest reason why our defense continues to struggle, we're giving up big plays. I mean, look at this number here. Plays of 20-plus yards allowed. Let me throw up. The Raiders have allowed 63 plays of more than 20 yards on defense. That can't happen. That leads to big-time plays, and then that's when our team gets crushed. It gets worse. Plays of 40-plus allowed. Dead last. We're dead last in 20, and we're dead last in 40-plus yards allowed. You want to talk about momentum shifts? You want to talk about mojo shifts? This is what happens when our team, I think, when we start playing okay, and then bang, snap of a finger, it's a big-time change. So if you want to be able to, get back to playing solid defense, you need to limit the big plays. Big plays happen when players don't know their assignments. And our secondary looks very confused. Now, let's go to the next coach who is on the hot seat. That's David Lippincott, okay? The Raiders have struggled at linebacker for years. That needs to change. And I think, personally, if Paul Guenther is fired, then you're going to see Lippincott also likely out the door because of his ties with Paul Guenther. Linebacker is thin. Losing Vontaze Burfict hurts. But how many people here, how long have you been a Raiders fan? Throw that in the comments section. Because one thing that gets constantly talked about is how bad our linebackers have played for multiple years. And sure, I still think that we won the Khalil Mack trade. But when you trade away an elite defensive player that plays linebacker, you better be able to make up for it. And we haven't made up for it. Sure, Tahir Whitehead's got a bunch of tackles, but I think tackles are one of the most overblown stats for a linebacker. He's getting a lot of tackles because he's playing a lot of snaps. Don't be surprised if the Raiders want to move on from Tahir Whitehead. So linebacker and safety, I got to come down. Which is the bigger issue right now, okay? What is the bigger issue right now for this Raiders team? If it's linebacker, I want you to type LB. If it's secondary, I want you to type S for secondary. Continue to get those flowing in. I need to get my creative juices flowing here. Bigger issue, LB for linebacker or type S for secondary. Now, before I tell you which coach the Raiders should hire to fix their defense, let me show you the 3 Raiders assistant coaches that are on the hot seat, brought to you by BMW of Santa Maria and Community Volkswagen. Great sign then drive car deals going on until January 6th. You can see it down below. Don't wait. If your car looks like mine, or if you're on the hot seat because you don't have any air conditioning, don't wait. Sign then drive ends January 6th. So, who's the coach that I want the Raiders to hire? I want them to hire Ron Rivera. The Panthers, they think they were dumb enough to fire him last week after going 5-7. Ron Rivera is actually one of my favorite coaches, and you know what karma is at its absolute finest? The Panthers fire Ron Rivera. The very next week, you give up 40 points to the Atlanta Falcons. because it was really Ron Rivera's fault. Absolute joke. Now, he says that he had no plans leaving the NFL, and he is a player's coach, and players love him, and we need to improve our defense. Now, this is what Ron Rivera had to say. My intent is to coach again. I love coaching. Not just coaching because it's about winning football games, but coaching because you have an opportunity to impact young men and people, and that's what I want to do. What's the one thing the Raiders have a ton of? Young players. What's something that I'm very confident Ron Rivera could do? Impact young men. Build a defense and help these young players know what they're doing. Because I've seen it for 2 years, and it's not Paul Guenther. It's not Paul Guenther. We just look way too confused. So, everyone, right now, I mean it, type R for Rivera. I want Ron Rivera to be this coach. I want him to be our next defensive coordinator. And if we're talking about headlines, I mean, Riverboat Ron sells itself in Las Vegas. Am I right? So, who would you want for the Raiders defensive coordinator? Please, 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 please type R for Rivera. I'll give some shout-outs here real quick. Broncos, Zaleb, Jason, continue to get those R's, spamming it in the comments because Ron Rivera needs to be our defensive coordinator in 2020. Raider Nation, what's going on? Is this the #1 Raiders channel on YouTube? For Chucky Heads, believe it, baby. And if you haven't already, subscribe right here. I'm giving you Chucky Heads, news, rumors, Raider Nation rumors. And look at this, I'm making your life easier. Check out my next video. Thanks for watching, and go Raiders.